I once tweeted about how I think that the opposition has to organize itself. That there's something lackluster there. Yeah, the Twitter people attack me. That's not normal. I don't care. But I found it interesting when I saw you tweeting about the quality of opposition politics in parliament. And I thought, well, we're all then seeing the same picture. And so when you speak about these differences now, and then at the same time, you simultaneously shun attempts to work together, how do you then do the overall job? Sihle is correct in characterizing you as the VAT police. And you have been effective. There's a reason why everybody's looking to talk to you. Because you're an important voice. But in order to become a stronger voice, right, and to be more effective going forward, you actually can't necessarily do it without the other party that's there. You must work together, don't you?
I think voting together is sufficient. I don't think, and I know this will ruffle, I don't think they add anything qualitatively to anything in opposition politics. And when we meet with them, and a lot of the progressive caucus meetings are now really about how we're going to vote and what is the logic of voting in that way. Because initially, in the earlier progressive caucus meetings I would attend, you could see that they don't have a program of action. They don't have a rationale for the opposition work that they do. And then it was almost like they're piggybacking on what the EFF has laid out it's going to do in Parliament legislatively. Now we do need support. I can concede. We can't do anything alone there. But I don't think they bring anything qualitatively to opposition politics in Parliament. So I think it's sufficient that we work together on the basis of voting together as a voting bloc with regards to rejecting what we might perceive as a regressive legislation being presented in Parliament, like the budget and the VAT increase. It's important for us to coalesce around those certain issue-by-issue positions, and we're strong enough to do that, and we're strong enough and mature enough to overcome our differences when it comes to that in Parliament. But other than that, I do not think they bring any value to opposition politics. And I've been saying it consistently, and it's just coming to fruition now. I mean, I wrote about a 7-hour meeting where they sat there in the Appropriations Committee where we were deliberating about the Division of Revenue Bill. And I'm with our senior researcher, Dr. Kumani, there, and we're contemplating how will this vote go and will our amendments get support necessary? Then he's like, no, but the MK is here. I get a shock. This is like 5 hours in that they're sitting behind us. And they haven't spoken this entire time. So you can see that there's a major challenge. And part of the challenge is, and when that was happening, it was when Floyd went to visit Bushiri. You can see that their internal ruptions disrupt their competency. Like they can't do anything because they're in turmoil internally. So there's no one, I think, there's no one, I think, who sits and thinks about what are we going to say about the budget, what are we going to say about this, because everyone is looking over their shoulder there, and I don't think they can add value in that regard.
I do hear about the internal ructions quite often, but part of what was wonderful about Parliament with the EFF story is that there were people who wanted to help you, who took your hand when you weren't there. But when the EFF was new to Parliament, it was a known thing that there were people who were like, oh, let's help them understand this rule or that rule. There were people, the camaraderie, there was a spirit that was there. So they don't add anything qualitative. I don't know if then you sit down and go, but guys, this is actually what you ought to do so that we can be effective. You passed that.
No, they lost that opportunity. We were willing to do that. I think in one of our meetings, we had even said that one of our researchers must find researchers for their caucus. Like we were willing to guide them step by step when we had pushed to support them as the official opposition.
Yeah.
And they hadn't conducted what they did with Floyd. There was actual agreement that, look, we're going to help these guys step by step. Yeah. We'll capacitate them with research. We'll have regular meetings with them to help them. But they ruined that. So they lost that grace from us a long time ago.
Okay. Yeah. I want to come back to the EFF. You spoke about part of the narrative that succeeded in getting the EFF to where it is. The doomsday narrative, in essence, based on what you're describing, was actually a successful campaign by the DA. But you then bring in the shoot the boer argument, which is actually a narrative that's picked up steam now with Donald Trump and US President Donald Trump and the disinformation campaign by fringe groups from here locally. So I don't necessarily put the two together because by elections, shoot the boer wasn't a part of the conversation, wasn't the narrative. It was definitely the doomsday argument. But you now have this thing with Donald Trump at the moment where, in a way, I don't know if there's a moment where you look at it as a silver lining, because in a way, where it felt like the EFF had lost some level of influence and people have forgotten about the EFF, you gained global attention via comments by those linked to a US president and old videos being posted at that matter.
Yeah, I think it's the stupidity of racism, and I think they don't appreciate that controversy can make heroes. Like, they don't appreciate that their interaction with the EFF, by trying to distort its message, gives us the platform and opportunity to clarify what that message actually is. So we had ventilated the matter of kill the poor, kill the farmer in the Equality Court, I think 2 years ago or 3 years ago now. And we argued there and we won the matter. Now it's the AfriForum has been defeated in the Constitutional Court, if I'm not mistaken. So the matter was put to rest. But because the AfriForum exists to fundraise through fear, they try to stoke this fear-mongering around the EFF and around the Kill the Poor, Kill the Farmer song as a process of engaging in white genocide or promoting white genocide. And this gets picked up by Elon Musk, who whispers in Donald Trump's ear. And they give the EFF a platform on something that we've already ventilated and put to bed. So I think it's a combination of two things. They don't understand that they're making the EFF relevant. And secondly, they're utilizing it to stoke fear and possibly to fundraise on the side of AfriForum. So I don't think it's a bad thing in our regard. They're giving us that free publicity and platform to explain what we mean and what we want to say about that. And it's a mistake that racists are making that they don't get. And they're free to do that. But I think the budget process was also a very important process in placing the EFF back into national discourse. And we used that effectively, I think, to get ourselves
I think so.
back.
I can't disagree with budget. But I want to go back to the fear story. Because then doomsday by account would have been a similar thing. Yet it was successful, you say. Yet the EFF, whatever trap was laid for the EFF, you didn't turn into heroes and use that as relevance. The election results suggested that actually there maybe is a credibility question. There is maybe some concern. If you and I agree that the DA's campaign was successful, no?
I think it was. I think it was in terms of framing a narrative around the EFF as being something that is a threat to constitutional democracy, coalescing around a lot of political parties and securing funds to contest elections around keeping the EFF out. I think it was successful for them in that regard. And I don't think it's more of a credibility question. I think perhaps we can do better to communicate the fact that it is not the case. I mean, we're in government in Johannesburg, in Ekurhuleni, in the city of Tshwane and Nelson Mandela Bay. There's never been a budget that has not passed there because we were trying to leverage something politically on the side or behind the scenes. There's never been a situation where there's crisis in these municipalities at the level of collapse because the EFF is at the forefront of trying to extort something. So we could do better to communicate the fact that the narrative that an inclusion of the EFF in governance equals constitutional or democratic collapse or is a threat to democracy or could result in a doomsday, because I don't think it's based on any verifiable fact now, but it's a narrative that was built up over a course of time, I think since the inception of the EFF, because of the policies that we represent.
No, it couldn't have been. You worked with the DA in 2016. They wouldn't have worked with you in 2016 in local government.
You know, the DA
calling you that. You did work with
We
them.
voted for DA
you're in a
mayors
working relationship.
There's no
with
working
the DA.
relationship. And I think it was important that we declined to form part of any coalition.
No, you're in a formal coalition. You're working in a working relationship.
I think it was important for us to not do so.
Sinawo, semantics.
They're important.
You're in a working relationship.
They're important because
absolutely. Even then, Julius would say, "I'm calling Helen. I want to work." So it was there. That was the truth.
The aim in 2016 was to strip the pers from the African National Congress that was extremely emboldened, had a lot of power,
which you now have,
and relied on the public purse to effectively run its elections machinery. It was important for us to strip that away from the ANC.
Which you now assist. When you look at local government, the ANC keeps you in their back pocket. You are what the ANC relies on to remain at the trough, so it is.
Look, it's a shift of politics, and I don't think to remain at the trough, but now we're included in those local government municipalities as well, and we're able to effectively leverage our work in local government